£10 million. That's how much the new roof for this house cost, and a dead princess paid for it. Her broken heart saved these walls. Her tragedy paid all the bills. Her grave became the main exhibit, and her ghost, its most valuable asset. Today, thousands flock here to see her final resting place. But have you ever wondered what this house is truly built on? Everyone thinks it devoured its most famous daughter in 1997. But that is a lie. This house has been a predator from its very first day. And its foundation isn't just clay and gravel. It is the compressed despair of hundreds of families, erased from the face of the earth so that it could appear. Summer. The air is thick and still, smelling of freshly cut grass and expensive perfume. The sound is not the rustling of leaves, but the dry, predatory click of hundreds of cameras. A procession moves across the gravel, laid with mathematical precision. These are not pilgrims. They are tourists. They walk on land that has absorbed the blood and sweat of 19 generations with a single purpose: to point a lens at someone else's death. The camera pulls back, and we see their target. A lake, perfectly round, too perfect to be real. In its center, an island, solitary, manicured, crowned with a white monument resembling a wedding cake, forgotten in the rain. This is the most profitable piece of land in all of England. A sanctuary built on the ruins of a private life. A grave turned into an attraction. And behind them, arrogant and silent, the house watches. Althorp, the stone heart of a dynasty, built to declare power, not to whisper of grief. For 500 years, it demanded money, titles, and advantageous marriages from its owners. Today, it demands an entrance fee. Its windows, like empty eye sockets, gaze at the crowd desecrating its peace and see in them its salvation. This is Althorp today. A memorial, a museum, a flawlessly executed business project where grief has a price list. But how? How did this fortress, erected on the ambitions of a wool merchant 5 centuries ago, become the final resting place for the most photographed, most hunted, most desired, and most unhappy woman of the 20th century? How did walls, steeped in the smell of old money and political intrigue, transform into a mausoleum for a princess who desperately tried to escape from here? Let's go inside. The doors close, cutting off the noise of the crowd, and silence falls. A deep, heavy, oppressive silence of 90 empty rooms. Here, the echo is the main resident. The echo of a little girl's footsteps, tap dancing on the cold marble of the great hall, just to fill the deafening emptiness after her parents' divorce. Her lonely, resonant taps, trying to prove that she is here, that she exists in this gigantic labyrinth that was meant to be a home but became a cage. A sunbeam breaks through a high window, pulling a column of dust from the gloom. In this dust are particles of powder from 18th century wigs, the ash of kings and prime ministers' cigars, fibers from ball gowns, and the tears of rejected brides. But today, it seems all the light in this house exists only to seek her out. Her ghost. It's here, in every room. An invisible presence that has become the estate's most valuable asset. More expensive than the Rubens canvases, more expensive than the antique porcelain, more expensive than the very land on which this house stands. Her image sells tickets. Her tragedy pays for the £10 million roof restoration. Her broken heart keeps this stone heart beating. Althorp survived, but to do so, it had to devour its own daughter, to bring her back from Paris, only to imprison her forever on an artificial island, turning her final refuge into a permanent attraction. The heritage turned out to be a predator, and it demanded its most terrible sacrifice. Forget the green lawns and immaculate facades. Rewind time. By 5 centuries, away from the gilded silence, we are met with mud. Cold, viscous, all-pervading mud of 16th century England. This place doesn't smell of history. It smells of damp earth, manure, and wet sheep's wool. This is not a pastoral watercolor. This is an open-air factory. In the center of this factory stands a man. His name is John Spencer. Don't look at his hands. They are clean. He holds neither whip nor axe. His weapons are a quill and parchment, a contract of sale, a promissory note. He is not an aristocrat, born to rule. He is a new kind of predator, born to count. A man who heard not the singing of birds, but the clinking of coins in his neighbor's purse. He looked at these hills and saw not a homeland, but an inefficiently used asset. On maps of the time, there were villages here, Wormleighton, and dozens of others, small points of life where generations were born and died on the same land. To Spencer, these points were an annoying hindrance. He began the process politely called enclosure. It sounds harmless, but it was economic violence honed to perfection. First, rights were bought up, then plots of land. Then his men would come and put up fences. A village that had lived for centuries as a single organism found itself cut to pieces. The common pastures, where peasants' cows grazed, now belonged to Spencer's sheep. The forests, where they gathered firewood, became his private property. The air around the village tightened like a noose. And then the hunger began. Not sudden, but slow, suffocating. And then Spencer offered a way out. Sell your home, your land, your past. For a few coins. There is no scream, just a quiet, dry crack. It's the sound of a peasant's hut beam cracking under an axe. They are taking it apart, to make the land clean, so that only grass could grow on it. Grass for sheep. 20,000 sheep by the year 1547. Their bleating was a requiem for the villages erased from the face of the earth. Their wool, white and pure, carried the invisible stains of tears. Every coin, washed clean of the Warwickshire mud, went into the common treasury. And in 1508, Sir John Spencer made his most important purchase. For £800 sterling, he acquired a piece of land called Althorp. £800, the price of a vanished world. He stood on this land, and he didn't see what was. He saw the ghost of the future. A house. Not just a house, but a stone testament to his victory. A statement carved into eternity. I came from nothing, and now I am here forever. My wealth is more real than your blood. My dynasty will outlive the memory of you. The first stone of Althorp was not laid on earth. It was laid on broken lives. Its foundation isn't just clay and gravel. It is the compressed despair of hundreds of families driven from their lands. Its initial capital is not gold. It is wool and tears, red brick, a deep, wrathful red brick, as if fired in the furnace of impatient ambition. This was Althorp at the beginning. Not an elegant palace, but a fist clenched against the world. It was built by a man who trusted no one. John Spencer, a new god, erecting a fortress for himself, surrounded by a moat. The moat was needed not so much for defense against enemies as to reflect his own new, powerful face. He wasn't building a home. He was building a declaration. Every window, an embrasure. Every wall, as thick as a man's fear. This was a building that screamed of money, but whispered of paranoia. It said, I am here, and I am not going anywhere. Try and smoke me out. Inside, dark oak panels that absorbed the smoke of fireplaces and the scent of intrigue. The dynasty put down roots in this red, blood-soaked earth. 200 years passed. The roots grew deep. Spencer's descendants were no longer merchants. They were earls. They wore silk and spoke French. And when they looked at their ancestors' fortress, they didn't feel pride. They felt shame. This red brick was a vulgar scar, a screaming reminder that their old money was once very new and very dirty. A fortress is for upstarts. Aristocrats need a palace. The Great Transformation began, an operation to erase the past. Enter the architect Henry Holland, a master of illusions. He wasn't commissioned to rebuild the house, but to make it lie, to hide its true nature under a new skin. And Holland performed a miracle. He dressed the old brick skeleton in a fashionable Palladian facade. Symmetry, harmony, a cold, rational beauty that referenced ancient temples. This was not just fashion, it was a political code, a password that distinguished us from them, the enlightened Whigs from the hidebound Tories. It was a statement. We are not just rich, we are the salt of the earth, we are the reason of the nation. But within this statement was a brilliant, shocking lie. The facade, which appears to be carved from noble stone, is not stone. Holland used mathematical tiles, special clay tiles, fired and fitted to perfectly imitate expensive stonework. It was a fake, a brilliant, high-tech counterfeit of the 18th century, plastic surgery for the aristocracy. The house learned to lie. It learned to hide its rough, red brick core beneath a mask of cold, intellectual perfection, just as the family learned to hide its origins. The new architecture was designed to erase memory, to make everyone forget that beneath this mask of enlightenment, a rough, red heart, built on wool and tears, was still beating. First, the music. Quiet, string music, seeping from the ballroom like expensive wine. Then, the light of 1,000 candles, drowning in the velvet of the drapes, glinting in the crystal, reflecting off the gilt on the walls, and dying on the pale skin of the women. The 18th century, the 19th. Althorp is no longer a fortress. It is the center of the universe. Here, a whisper in a corner decides the fate of ministries. Here, a smile given over dinner can start or end a war. Kings, princes, dukes, they are not just guests. They are props in the great play the Spencers are staging for the entire world. This is not a ball. It is the theater of power, and Althorp is its flawless stage. But when the music fades and the carriages depart, the house exhales, and in that silence, another sound is heard, a quiet, dry rustle of turning pages. It comes from the heart of the house, from the library. Here, the second Earl Spencer reigns, a man obsessed with silence and the smell of old paper. For him, the world outside this room has ceased to exist. It smelled different here, not of wax and perfume, but of old leather, wood dust, and a slow, noble decay. He wasn't just building a collection. He was building a paper mausoleum for his mind. 40,000 volumes, each one perfect, each one of the rarest kind. He didn't read them. He possessed them. He bought not knowledge, but immortality, page by page. This obsession had a twin sister: gambling, nights in London clubs where fortunes turned to dust with the roll of the dice. Every rare folio in Althorp's library was paid for by a loss at the card table. The Gutenberg Bible, bought at the peak of his madness, became the jewel of the collection and the final nail in the family's financial coffin. The Temple of Knowledge had turned into a debtor's pit. It was then that the house showed its true face. It ceased to be a symbol of power. It became an insatiable monster. The walls seemed to suck in gold, demanding more and more for their upkeep. The silk on the walls faded. The roof began to leak. The house demanded sacrifices, and it received them. Lands were sold. Assets went under the hammer. The library, the greatest treasure, became a financial noose around the neck of each successive generation. Life at Althorp ceased to be life. It became an endless play, performed for the dead. In the long portrait gallery, 100 ancestors look down from the walls, not at the visitors. They look at their descendants. Their powdered faces, frozen in oil paint, express nothing but a single, silent question. Are you worthy? Every dinner in the vast dining hall is an examination. Every step on the creaking parquet is a report. You do not live your own life. You play the role of Earl Spencer, looking at the portrait of Earl Spencer, under the watchful eye of another Earl Spencer, a gilded cage. Its bars are elegant moldings and masterpieces by Van Dyck. Its floor is covered with Persian carpets. In it, you are fed from silver, and the best musicians in Europe play for you. But it is a cage. There is no escape from here. Heritage is not a gift. It is a life sentence. They did not own the house. The house owned them. And the price of this ownership was the slow suffocation of the soul. The 20th century burst into the world with the roar of engines and the wail of sirens. Empires collapsed. Borders changed. The old gods were dying. But here, behind the 300-year-old oaks of Althorp, time stood still. The house did not notice the changes. It breathed as slowly and deeply as it had 100 years before. The air inside was different, heavy, stale, steeped in the past. It refused to mix with the new, fast, anxious era. And into this frozen silence walked a little girl, Diana. She was born in this house, but she did not belong to it. For her, Althorp was not a nest. It was a universe that suddenly shattered. Her parents' divorce, a word that was not spoken within these walls. It sounded like a gunshot, and its echo never faded. The house became empty, not literally, but it filled with an emptiness that roared in the ears louder than any scream. 90 rooms, and in none of them was there a hiding place. Long, endless corridors, where the only sound was your own footsteps. They sounded lonely, frightened. She wandered through them, a small figure in a vast space, touching the cold walls that had seen everything but did not know how to comfort. She claimed she heard ghosts here, crying and footsteps in the night. But perhaps it was just the whisper of the house itself, which fed on the loneliness of its inhabitants. This is Wootton Hall, a gigantic 43-foot-high hall with a cold marble floor, designed to inspire awe in ambassadors and kings. For her, it became a personal stage. She would put on an old record and dance, tap dance. Her little feet beat out a fast, desperate rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. A bright, fragile echo scattered throughout the house, trying to fill that oppressive, aristocratic void. It wasn't just a child's game. It was a metaphor for her entire life. A small, living person, desperately trying to be heard in the vast, cold mausoleum of heritage. She danced to prove to herself that she was there, that she was real, that her heart was beating. This house should have been her fortress, her refuge. But it became her first labyrinth, the place where she learned loneliness, where dozens of ancestors stared down at her from the walls, their lives mapped out from birth to death. But she wanted a different destiny. Althorp was not just the house she left. It was the cage from which she broke free. She fled from its silence, from its cold, from its all-consuming past. Fled in search of warmth, love, a simple human life. She didn't yet know that you can never escape that cage for good, that one day the house would demand her back, not alive, but as its most valuable exhibit. The 70s, the 80s. The world outside vibrated with punk rock and neon light, but inside Althorp, A quiet, panicked hum was growing. It was the sound of decay. The house was dying, not quickly and dramatically, but slowly, like an old man from 1,000 minor ailments. The roof, the size of a football field, had turned into a sieve. The stone of the facade crumbled like a dry biscuit. The wood paneling, which remembered the visits of kings, was being eaten by woodworm. The financial crisis, which had been brewing for centuries, had reached its final, terminal stage. Heritage was no longer an asset. It had become a curse. Diana's father, the 8th Earl Spencer, and his new wife Rain, whom the children called Acid Rain behind her back, faced a choice. Allow 500 years of history to crumble into noble ruins, or begin a rescue operation. They chose rescue. But within the walls of Althorp, that word acquired a new, terrifying meaning. Rescue meant a sell-off. The great auction of the soul began. Just imagine. Quiet people in severe suits from Christie's auction house, walking through the halls with notepads. They don't see history. They see lots. Their fingers, accustomed to the coldness of numbers, touch the gilded frame of a Rubens painting, not a masterpiece. Lot number 42. They appraise the armchair in which Churchill sat, not a relic. Lot number 105. They peer into Chinese vases, gifts from admirals of the East India Company, not a memory of colonial glory. Lot number 230. The house began to devour itself to survive. Its flesh, its memories, its DNA, everything was put up for auction. Tens of millions of pounds were raised from these auctions. The money was immediately converted into repair estimates. An ancient tapestry, sold to New York, paid for the replacement of rotted rafters. A portrait by Gainsborough, flown to Tokyo, was transformed into new lead drain pipes. This was transplant surgery on the scale of an estate. The house was getting rid of its organs so that its heart could keep beating. For Diana and her brother, Charles, this was not a rescue. It was a desecration. They had grown up among these things. Every painting, every little table, every armchair was a part of their own body, their personal memory. They watched as their childhood was catalogued, appraised, and sold to strangers. And they began their own small, desperate, childish war. They ran through the house with a pack of self-adhesive labels. And on their most beloved objects, on those that were not just antiques but a part of themselves, they stuck little paper screams, "Do not sell." It was a rebellion, a revolt of the flesh against the will of the stone, a civil war waged in gilded halls where the past was sacrificed for the future. But they lost, because the will of the house proved stronger. Althorp demanded sacrifices, and it received them. It survived, but it was changed. Empty. The walls were saved, but on them remained pale rectangular ghosts where the sold paintings once hung. The house was saved, but its soul had been put up for auction. August 1997. Night. A phone call shatters the sleepy silence of Althorp. Cold official words flying across the English Channel. Paris, a tunnel, a crash. In that moment, the world stops, and then it explodes. Althorp, a forgotten aristocratic nest, slowly dying in the English countryside, is suddenly at the epicenter of a global storm. Grief, like a tsunami, crashes against its gates. First streams, then rivers, then an ocean of flowers, notes, and children's drawings. The world wept for its princess, and that weeping was directed here. The house she had fled suddenly became her only home. Her brother, Charles Spencer, the 9th Earl, who had inherited empty walls and enormous debts, stands in the midst of this chaos. In his hands is not just a family tragedy. In his hands is the future of Althorp. and he makes a decision. Fateful, brilliant, and monstrous. He understands. The house's agony is over. Its salvation has arrived, but in the most twisted form. If before Althorp sold its possessions, now it can sell something far more valuable, something intangible. He can sell her ghost. A battle begins, unseen but brutal, with Buckingham Palace, for her body. The royal family wants to bury her at Windsor, to make her part of their royal pantheon. But Charles Spencer says no. He writes his famous angry eulogy, contrasting the blood family with the cold establishment. And he wins her back. He brings Diana home, but not to the family crypt. That would be too simple, too personal. He creates a new, perfect, painfully beautiful resting place for her. The round oval lake is deepened. An artificial island is built up in the center. 36 oak trees are planted, one for each year of her life. A white, mournful monument is erected. This is not a grave. It's a set piece, the perfect spot for a final scene. The world watches, holding its breath. And then, the gates of Althorp open, for the first time in 500 years, to everyone, for a fee. Accusations of commercializing grief sound like distant thunder, but they are drowned out by the rustle of banknotes. 150,000 people in 2 summer months. Every ticket is a nail in the coffin of the old, closed world of the aristocracy. Every postcard sold, every mug with her image, is another pound sterling for the roof repairs. To save the walls, they had to sell its soul. To preserve the legacy, they had to monetize the most bitter loss. Althorp survived. It was reborn. From an aristocratic house, it transformed into a brand. From a family nest, into a memorial complex. It no longer devoured its own paintings. It began to feed on worldwide love and worldwide grief. The ghost of the last Spencer princess became an eternal, inexhaustible source of income. And here it is today. Althorp, bathed in sunlight, quiet, immaculate. The roof, which cost £10 million, no longer leaks. The facade's stone, restored with tourists' money, stands firm. On the lawns where sheep once grazed, earning the family's first capital, wedding guests now stroll. In the halls where political intrigues were once woven, literary festivals are now held. The house is saved. It looks better than it has in 100 years. It shines. It is calm. It has won. But listen closely. Through the guests' laughter and the clicks of cameras, you can hear a faint hum. It's the hum of air conditioners in the gift shop, the chime of the cash register, the swipe of credit cards. This is the new pulse of the house, its new commercial heart. Sir John Spencer, the wool merchant, wanted to build an eternal monument to his dynasty, a place that would inspire awe and prove the power of his line. Well, he got it, but in the most twisted, most unforeseen form. His house truly became a monument, but not to him, not to his earl sons, not to his politician grandsons, but to his distant great-granddaughter, the most rebellious, the most tragic one, the one who tried to break free from this place. It has turned into a shrine, holding her shadow. Her face looks out from 1,000 postcards. Her story is the main exhibit. 500 years of ambitions, wars, intrigues, and marriages have become merely a long, elaborate prelude to her life and death. The price of salvation is an eternal life under the constant gaze of the crowd, the loss of privacy, the transformation of a home into a backdrop. From a subject of history, it has become its object. It no longer creates events. It services them. What remains of the 500-year dream of eternal power? Stones. Stones that have absorbed everything: the sweat of builders, the tears of evicted peasants, the whispers of conspirators, the loneliness of a little girl, the grief of an entire world. Stones that now keep a perfect, profitable silence. And an island, an artificial island in the middle of an artificial lake, the final act in the great play of Althorp. It brings in a steady income. It guarantees the future. It is a symbol of legacy's final victory over the individual. Legacy is a predator, and here at Althorp, it has not just survived, it is fed, and it will live forever. And so a 500-year circle is closed. The predator that built these walls on the despair of others gave birth to a legacy that, to survive, demanded its own daughter as a sacrifice. Althorp is not just a house, it is an eternal machine that turns any human tragedy, be it a peasant's poverty or a princess's death, into its own foundation. But if a legacy, in order to live, must feed on the souls of its guardians, doesn't its preservation become the most terrible form of destruction? And in the end, what is more valuable, the stones that remember, or the hearts that they break? This discussion doesn't end here, within the walls of Althorp. It continues in your thoughts. Write in the comments what the word legacy means to you. And if stories that make you look deeper are important to you, subscribe to the channel and support this video.